Follow Dave and Lindsay. There you go. Hey, Wes.
Well, I'm just going to repeat Patty's story, so here we go. This is a story lived in the gap between reputation and restoration, between who the world says someone is and who they couldn't become. As you listen, notice how Jesus moves through social boundaries and expectations, how mercy disrupts the usual definition of righteousness. What if grace rewrites the story before we even knew it began? Let us hear the story as written by Luke, chapter 19, 1 through 10. Then Jesus entered and walked through Jericho. There was a man there. His name was Zacchaeus, the head taxman and quite rich. He wanted desperately to see Jesus, but the crowd was in his way. He was a short man, and he couldn't see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed up a sycamore tree so he could see Jesus when he came by. When Jesus got to the tree, he looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, hurry down. Today is a day to be guest in your home." Zacchaeus scrambled out of the tree, hardly believing his good luck, delighted to take Jesus home with him. Everyone who saw the incident was indignant and grumped. What business does he have being cozy with that crook? Zacchaeus just stood there, a little stunned, and stammered apologetically, "Master, I give away half my income to the poor, and if I'm caught cheating, I pay 4 times the damages." Jesus said, "Today is salvation day in this home. Here he is, Zacchaeus, son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to find and restore the lost." May the story of Zacchaeus move us to live lives that make room at the table for the unexpected, the overlooked, and the ones still climbing trees to catch a glimpse of hope. May the grace of God find a home in us.
Thank you, Dan. There's a lot of grumbling in that story today, the story of Zacchaeus. And quite honestly, it's a bit understandable. Zacchaeus was a tax collector, and he was a darn good one because he was the chief tax collector. What that means is he was a collaborator with Rome, a man who built his wealth by skimming off the top and exploiting his own people to pad his own pockets. So when Jesus invites himself to Zacchaeus' house, the crowd responds in a way that we might imagine ourselves responding to, right? They're murmuring, they're judging, and if we're honest, they speak some truth. Because there are times, in a way, when don't we all want to call out injustice? Times when we want to name wrongdoing. Times when we believe that righteousness really matters. And yes, it really should. But yet this story comes to us today and challenges us to think more deeply about what righteousness actually looks like. Challenges us to think more deeply about what role mercy plays in the transformation of hearts. Zacchaeus in the story didn't first confess and admit to all of his wrongdoings. He didn't fall on his knees and let Jesus and everyone else know what a horrible person he's been and how many people he's cheated. All he does really is climb a tree and try to see Jesus and get a good glimpse. But he actually sees Jesus, and what happens is Jesus actually sees him. And instead of condemnation and calling him out, Jesus responds with, "Hey, I'm coming to your house today." No lecture, no shame, No calling him out, just a surprising, disorienting act of grace and calling him in. Can you imagine? First of all, the idea of Jesus saying, "Hey, Patty, I'm coming to your house today." I'm thinking, oh gosh, is the house clean? Do I have anything to eat in there? Right? Those practical matters. But imagine that. To be seen so completely, to know that the one who is seeing you really sees you and knows all about you and yet calls you in. And somehow, in this story with Zacchaeus, somehow that changes everything for Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus gladly welcomes Jesus in. He takes him, and suddenly his whole life is changing. His whole life is worth changing. Suddenly, this man who made a living off of climbing over others and hurting his own people, doing anything he can to get to the top, says he's going to give it all back and then some. Maybe, just maybe, mercy has helped Zacchaeus find a better way. Maybe he saw himself honestly for the first time. Maybe this story isn't really about choosing between righteousness or mercy, but discovering that we actually can't have one without the other. I don't know if any of you are Ted Lasso fans. Have any of you watched it? Anyone at all? Oh, good. So if a couple people will know what I'm talking about. Well, we just finished the first 3 seasons. We were late adopters, Jim and I, because if I'm honest, there's a sports theme in there, and I'm not that interested, right? I'm not really into soccer, and I thought there was going to be, or football. I thought there was going to be more conversation about that, and it took me like 3 tries to get started. But I love Ted Lasso. It's the fact that probably Jim reminded me that many of you haven't seen it kept me from sharing a little video in worship today, so you can thank Jim for that. But there's this part in Ted Lasso when one of the staff members who was like a locker room helper guy, what did they call him before he became the assistant coach? He was like Kit man. Thank you. See, I don't capture the sports analogies, but what I really captured was this whole episode about forgiveness. So the Kit man was promoted to one of the assistant coaches, and then dirty double cross, left the team, felt like he wasn't seen or heard, and on his way out, he took down the big sign that Ted Lasso had pasted on the locker room wall that said "Believe." He tore it down, he ripped it up, and then the team learned about that. The coaches all learned about that, and they were so upset with him. His name was Nate. And Nate went on to coach another team, their biggest rivalry team, and he was very good. They were calling him the Wonder Kid because he's brilliant, really, really smart person, and was a very good coach as far as the strategy of the game. But it wasn't really working out for him there for a number of reasons, and really they want to have him come back to their team. And so Ted Lasso, who was the main coach, goes to one of the main assistant coaches and said, I think it's time. We're going to have Nate. What do you think about bringing Nate back on the team? The team wants him here, and I think it's time. And Coach Beard is his name, and Coach Beard says, I'll never have that Judas come back to this team. And that sits for a while. Then there's this part in the story where... And what I love about Ted Lasso, he doesn't always go right at it. He kind of goes at things sideways. He shows the other coach this video that they caught on security camera of Nate when he ripped down the sign. He ended up getting stuck in that room because the team was coming back in the room, and he had to hide under the desk for 2 hours. And then when he went to leave again, the cleaning team came in, and he had to go in for stay under the desk for another couple hours. And it shows him stuck under the desk, and Ted Lasso is showing Coach Beard this whole thing, saying, isn't that something, poor Nate, isn't that something? And then the guy was locked in there. He couldn't get out. He had to jump out the window. So He was building empathy for him. And then he says to Coach Beard, I've done a lot of wrong things in my life, but I would never want to have my whole life judged on my one worst moment. My lowest time. The time I made the worst choices. Long story short, Coach Beard finds his way around to forgiving Nate. And the scene where he forgives Nate is just very remarkable, hard not to cry. That really struck me. I really hope that I'm not judged, my whole life isn't judged by my lowest one time or two times, my lowest times, my worst choices when I wasn't my best self. I really hope that in my life I am given the benefit of the doubt, because isn't that what we all want? The benefit of the doubt. That's a time you guys could nod with me here and say, yeah, I think you all want the benefit of the doubt. If you don't, we could work with that, but I don't know. You see, the transformation for Zacchaeus didn't start with shame. Personally, I don't think much good ever comes from shame. It started with Jesus seeing him, honoring his desire to see him, and inviting him down from his perch. Mercy was a surprise. Mercy, grace. The question for us today is, what's keeping us from seeing Jesus like that? What crowds are we stuck in that we can't see past, that cloud our view? Zacchaeus couldn't see over the crowd, so he ran ahead and he climbed higher. Sometimes we need to rise above the crowd we're in too to get a better view of Jesus, to see past our own self-righteousness, our own echo chambers, and catch a glimpse of something truer, something freer. We have an opportunity to ask ourselves, what is our crowd doing today? Is your crowd helping you to see Jesus? Or is your crowd making it a little harder? If we're honest, we're living in a tough time where the noise of the crowd is very, very loud. Social media, cable news, group chats, political tribes. We're constantly surrounded by voices telling us who should be in, who should be out, who deserves the grace, and certainly who doesn't deserve the grace. I can't stand it. Can you? I just can't. It's too much. It feels like as a country, as a people, we've all taken this mostly fatal dose of self-righteousness. We've grown addicted sometimes, I think, to this moral certainty. And somewhere along the way, we've forgotten the gentle power of humility, of curiosity, and of mercy. But the good news, my friends, is that Jesus hasn't. Jesus still stops for Zacchaeus and every Zacchaeus of the world today. Jesus still invites himself into the homes of every Zacchaeus, into our homes. Jesus still surprises us with grace. Even when we're up in trees and wrapped up so tight we can barely see straight. Salvation has come into this house, Jesus says. Not just salvation has come into this man. This is not just the one-on-one thing. Because salvation, in Jesus' terms, is more of a right here, right now. Sometimes we get so confused about salvation being about the next life, like my salvation is guaranteed. I've turned my life over and I'm all set. Well, no, really? Are we all set when your neighbors aren't all set? Every single Sunday we preach, Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. I believe salvation is about being delivered back into right relationship with one another and with God. It's about being brought out of isolation and being brought into belonging. What Zacchaeus received that day is not just a pardon, but more like a homecoming. The homecoming that Jesus offers all of us today. All of us. The ones who have made many mistakes. The ones who have more than enough but feel like they actually have nothing. The ones who stop believing in second chances. The ones stuck in crowds, unsure just how to break free. Jesus comes to each of us. Righteousness without mercy isn't righteousness at all. It's just judgment dressed up in churchy clothes. And mercy without justice isn't mercy. It's enabling. But when they're held together, when we rise above the crowd noise and actually see one another, when we let ourselves be surprised by grace, that, my friend, that is when transformation happens. That transformation that changes our heart. That's where salvation shows up. And that's where Jesus is. So if you find yourself stuck in a crowd, unable to see Jesus, I want to remind you that Jesus sees you. Jesus says, "Come down. I have a surprise for you." And that surprise, it's mercy. It's restoration. It's a life that is more than just making a living. It's a full life of love. Thanks be to God. Amen.